Forum at All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Spencer Graves. I am a member of the Forum Committee. This forum is a platform for the discussion of significant issues, especially those that involve ethical values in the contemporary world. It has been doing this since 1943. Descriptions of nearly all these forums since 2012 are searchable at kkfi.org, Public News and Public Affairs, then also as forum. Podcasts are available for most of those. This program is live streamed on YouTube where viewers can post questions in the chat, but they need to log in to do so. The chat will be monitored and questions posted there will be asked in turn, time permitting, and we need somebody to volunteer to monitor the chat. Oh, we have it. Good. People in the room with me are asked to silence your cell phones. Our guest today is Romary Daval, Secretary General of Un Bout des Médias, a purpose for the media in French. It is a citizens group campaigning for media independence. They lobby for changes in law to give journalists greater control over editorial policy. They also raise funds for investigative journalism organizations. Un Bout des Médias was founded by Julia Cagé, an economics professor at Sciences Po in Paris, one of the top political science universities in France. In 2016, I found her new book, Saving the Media, Capitalism, Crowdfunding, and Democracy, which had been published the previous year in French. And by the end of the following year, it had appeared in 10 other languages. I have since reviewed all the literature I've found so far on the role of the media in political economy, and she is my candidate for the leading contributor on that issue. I think of Un Bout des Médias as similar to both freepress.net, which lobbies for media reform in the U.S., and the Institute for Nonprofit News, which helps news nonprofits with fundraising and editorial assistance. Last October, I suggested that the Forum Committee invite Romary to speak because I think a better understanding of Un Bout des Médias might help us here in our efforts to improve democracy in the U.S. Romary will speak for roughly half an hour, after which we will take a collection and then open the floor for questions. Romary?
Yes, thank you very much for your kind introductions, Spencer. Good morning to all of you. This is the afternoon for me, but I know this is the morning for you. I'm effectively the General Secretary of Un Bout des Médias. So Un Bout des Médias is what we call in France an associations. Uh, so we have three main areas of work. We are lobbying the public authority to improve the law about the independence and the freedom of speech in France. We make training conference to the citizens to help them to understand the importance of the media, the free media, and the independent media. And this was we started that last year. We are helping some of the media to when they ask us support some newsroom. This is the case at the moment for a consumer magazine in France called 60 millions, 60 millions, which is roughly speaking the population of France, which but we also can do expertise, uh, legal expertise, financial expertise to help media or newsroom. Oh, thank Just to put into perspective, and I'm sure that most of you are very familiar with what is France. France is obviously a smaller country than the United States, about 68 million of inhabitants. On the population is very centralized in Paris. The city of Paris itself is 2 million, but the area of Paris is about 13 million inhabitants. On, uh, on for historical reasons, also, this is a very centralized country where all the political decisions are taken in Paris, and so lots of companies have, almost all companies, actually, big companies have their headquarters in Paris. So this is a very centralized country, and this is important to understand. It's probably a great difference media-wise. It's probably a big difference from what you are used to have in the US, even if there are big medias in the US. We are members of the European Union, Claire. We are one of the founding country of the European Union. Also, to put into perspective, the national newspapers, even if now probably for most of them the numeric, the internet is more important than the paper. The biggest newspapers is called Le Monde, which is difficult to put to say what on what side of the political areas they are. The second one is Le Figaro, which is historically speaking a right side newspapers, very old newspaper, more than 100 years of existence. Le Monde has been created just after the Second World War. L'équipe, which is the third one, is l'équipe, the team, if I translate directly. It's a sport newspaper. Les Echos is economical newspaper. On Libération, which have been also created after the Second World War, with a very complicated history but that are a leftist side newspaper. They are the five biggest national newspaper. They are also regional newspaper on new. There are lots of titles, but these titles are owned by a very small numbers of groups, which means that there is even if they have different name, they are this is the level of concentration is relatively high. You can see, for example, that I live in the brown area, in the south of the brown area. I don't know if you see my cursor. On they own newspaper from the south to almost the area to Paris. So there is a relatively big concentration of the local newspaper. And we'll talk again about concentration because this is an important topic, an important problem in France on the newspaper. In terms of radio and television, it's not the whole list of radio and televisions, but the main one, we have two areas: a public media that are funded by the administrations, uh, a radio called Radio France, on a television called France TV, which Radio France and France TV have several channels, uh, but they are the two big public media in France that have been created in the 60s. Uh, we have also, of course, a big private area for that. M6, TF1, Canal Plus are mainly televisions. That Canal Plus is a specific one because it's a pay TV. The rest you can access without paying. Europe One, Europe One, RMC are radio. Alors, what the characteristic of the media in France is the high concentrations of all the media. Uh, Now, we say billionaires because the medias are in France owned by people that are not press peoples, that are most of the time industrial peoples. So 10% of the newspaper are owned by these 10 persons. Uh, for television, 55% of the audience, and same for the radio. So there is a very high degree of concentrations, and that clearly have an impact on what people can access to to the information the people can access. Sorry about my English. For examples, this is a channel called C News, owned by Mr. Bolloré. Mr. Bolloré is an industrial person which own companies in several areas. So he owns this television called C News. Before in 20, he bought it in 2014. You can see the dotted lines. On Mr. Bolloré, and he doesn't hide that. He said wants to promote his ideas. And his ideas are on the extreme right, which is extreme right. You may know that in Europe, in France in particular, but in Europe in general, uh, is a growing movement in Europe. So before 2014, this has been calculated by researcher, including Julia Cagé that Spencer mentions at the beginnings. Before 2014, the time was equally shared between all the political movements. Here you see the percentage of time dedicated to the right on C News. So before 2014, it was well, you have variation, of course, but globally speaking, it was uh, it was average. After Mr. Bolloré bought it, it's very clear that the extreme right have been represented a lot more than before 2014. And this is not feeling, this is a result of calculations that have been made on the time of, of broadcasting. Alors, alors it's not always like that. Uh, I mentioned in the main newspaper Le Monde. So Le Monde is alors it's a very complicated sketch, but Le Monde is owned at 70% by three very wealthy persons, Mr. Niel, Mr. Pigas, and Mr. Kretinsky, uh, at 72%, and the rest is owned what is called the independent pool, which are composed of several little companies. I'm trying to find the right term in English, but let's call that companies, owned by the journalists, by some of the readers. Alors, you may think that the fact they have only 25% make that the three billionaires have all the power. Except that there is an agreement between these three persons on the independence pool that allow give more power, lots of power to these independent polls. Uh, for example, the editor vote for the editorial directors. If the owner wants to have a new directors, to propose it to the journalist, and the journalist vote, and if they against, the owner would have to find another one, and again there will be a vote. So there are in some media, not a lot unfortunately, some possibilities of giving more powers to the journalists and the employees of the newspaper. Alors to go further on this route, I want to speak about the in-depth. Uh, there are lots. Alors, for most of them, they are small media, with one exception that I will talk about. Very small media, but they are interesting because they are putting in place an ownership of the capital, which allow the journalists, the newsroom to make the job in an independent manner. The first one, and this is the one which is rather important, is a media called Mediapart. So Mediapart has been founded in 1999, if my memory is correct, and is a pure player. This is only on internet. Uh, all the capital of the media is owned by what is called the FPL, le Fonds pour une presse libre, the Free Press Fund. Probably this is a good translation. Own all the capital, and this is the 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 governance of the FPL is very transparent, uh, with publications of the decisions. The board is the people on the board are journalists, people from the outside of the newspapers, employees of the media. So, on by rules, they cannot sell the capital of the media. So that guarantee, and they are complete, and there is an agreement between the newsroom on the FPL that they don't impose anything on the line of the newspaper. So that allows the media to be completely independent on the newsroom to work without any outside influence uh, of, of anybody. Alors, there is an intermediate company because for legal reasons they are obliged to have this company between the media, but this is a purely technical organizations, no influence on the line of the newspapers. I want to mention also, I mentioned that at the beginning there was a rather high concentrations of the regional press. There is a small media called Médias, and they are present in four major cities in France. Uh, for more one exception, they are the biggest outside Paris. They are the biggest, the biggest cities. Uh, they are an investigative journalism, which is not as outside Paris. This is not very frequent. the local newspaper don't do a lot of investigations. So this is clearly something which is different from what the major newspaper, the regional newspapers. Uh, the capital is owned, the, the, the majority of the capital, the biggest part of the capital are owned by the founders, 9%, that are for most of them journalists of the media. There are a series of individual shareholders, the 46 in green and the 46%. And there is, you can see in blue, 7% owned by what is called a Société des Amis, Society of Friends, uh, meaning Society of Friends of Mediacité. So readers can buy some share of this society, which own 7% of the capital. And for example, I own some share in this SDA, as we call it sometimes. So this is also when they need new funding, they they also try to find outside capitals, but they also ask the SDA if they can help them to increase the capital and help them to find money for the development of the media. Another examples of ownership by citizens of a part of a media in the city of Marseille in the south of France, which is the second biggest city in France. There is a small media called Marsactu. This is a contraction of two words that also do investigating journalism. Journalism. The majority here also the majority of the capital is owned by the founders and the journalists, and there is a similar repartitions of the shares. Un Bout des Médias, so the association and the general secretary decided last year to acquire a small part of the capital. Marsactu was looking for new capital to fund these developments. So Un Bout des Médias, after discussions with them, decided to acquire a part of the capital. So it's also one of the objective of the with the media to promote the ownership of media by citizens. So this was the first examples. We don't know if we'll do that again, but that can happen. That we can help to fund the development of a media by acquisition of a part of the capital. Alors, of course, we will not influence the line of the. This is not our objective. Our objective is to protect the independence of the media. So we help them. We will have a chair on what they call the strategy committee inside the media, which is it's not a decision taken committee. It's a committee that helps them to take decisions on strategical decisions. Alors, in as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentations, um, we are lobbying the the political area to improve the law in France about the independence of press. Now, this is one of our major actions, and we have five big propositions. The first one is to have the transparency on governance on the shareholding of the media. Uh, we uh, we want we want the citizen to be able to know a media, to understand if that can be would be what could be the influence of the media by the shareholder. I show you that Mr. Bolloré has clearly an important influence on CNews. But it's not always easy to. This, in the case of Mr. Bolloré, it's rather easy to know, to be honest. But there are other examples where it's difficult to who own a big media. And we are not the only one to have that. There is a European law that is under discussions in the EU. On in this law, for media, they have put also on articles on transparency of the shareholding of the media. We want also fit would needs to be reinvest in the information productions. We consider that a media is not a company like other companies. So so the money that is earned by a media should be invested in the information productions and not go in the pocket of the shareholders. Uh, now, the one I forgot to translate it. I'm sorry. So I will translate it. I will translate it now. So we want that the journalist. That is the third bullet point, and I'm sorry, this is in French. I forgot to translate it. That the journalist on the employee are part of the board of the media, uh, to be able, first, to be the voice of the newsroom, the voice of the people working in the media, on influence decisions to protect the independence of the media. You understood that there is in France a big problem about the concentration of the media. Uh, there are law against that, but unfortunately, these laws are old ones first, and as they are old, they are, for example, when they have been put into force into publications, there was no internet, so you can understand that in 2024, if you don't take in account the internet in the for the informations, you are lacking, so you are missing something which is very important, much more important than the papers on the print. And also the rules are not very good. At the time they have been issued, there was some rationale to put that in place. They were not sufficient, even at the time they were put in place. But clearly, this must be completely reviewed on lots of people, associations, newspaper are asking to review these rules to improve the freedom of press in France and decrease the influence of some of the billionaires I talked about before. I also mentioned the fact that in France, like in all European countries, as far as I know, there are public media for radio and televisions. There was the rule, the finance, the way it is financed have been completely changed 2 years ago. So we want to, we are looking at this, the funding of this public media still be good enough to maintain the quality and the independence of these media. So this is the end of my presentation. So I will be delighted to answer all your questions. Uh,
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, Romary. We will now request donations to cover the cost of the facility and staff time needed to support these programs. And instructions for how to donate online should appear in the chat. Am I right about that, Renee? Good, good. Checks can be mailed to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, 4501 Walnut Street, Kansas City, Missouri, 64111. You can mention the form in the memo of your check, or you can go to allsoulskc.org and um, and there should be a place on there to yeah, bring that up here, Dave. Thank you. Okay, so for people who have questions, we've come up right here and come up to the this microphone and speak clearly into the microphone. People watching you via YouTube live should be able to put questions in the chat. One person per question until everyone has had an opportunity to ask a question, please. And please, no speeches so we can make better use of the time of our speaker. Thank you.
As you're probably aware, in the United States, there has been a diminishing number of newspapers and also diminishing readers of newspapers and a more of a public dependence on particularly television. So is this also occurring in France? And if so, to what degree?
Effectively, I know that in the US, I know the situation in the US. I think it's quite different, but we have to be careful that we don't face a similar situation. Uh, I show you the map of France with the different group of regional newspapers. And to be honest, at the moment, to be clear, they are the only regional information that people have in some rural area. Of course, the television, which they can access. They can access on the internet, but on newspaper we have to be careful in the countryside the people still have access to different possibilities of information. You are mentioning that people are in the US are tied to the televisions. And the situation in France is different because the television in France is quite different than in the US. Alors first, the the public television still very strong, very strong, and this is one of the reasons why we have to be careful that remain that they have enough money to still do the job. On today, on you have tradition in France that is also different. You have half an hour of informations well, at midday, but this is not the most important. The most important is at 8 o'clock in the evenings. And that remains the first way of getting information for French people. Uh, so television channels are fighting, private or public ones, are fighting to maintain a good quality for that, because this is very important to capture the time of people for this information slot. So the situation, I think, is different than in the US, but we have to be careful to maintain a good variety of possibilities of information.
Hi. A lot of people in the States get their news from social media, which honestly is a terrible place to get your news. Um, what do you think would be the best way to go about getting some kind of regulation or reform out of Facebook, Instagram, X, all the major social media platforms? How would you go about doing that?
That's a very, very important and very difficult question. And it's not only in the US, it's also in Europe that lots of people are getting information from the social media. And this is clearly a problem. And I think the problem is the same in North America, or in America than in Europe. Uh, it's difficult to answer your questions. It's really difficult to answer the questions. And to be honest, this is an area where we are trying to work on that at Un Bout Médias. And for the moment, we don't have good answer to that. Uh, my personal two possibilities for me as an individual, not as members of Un Bout Médias, is probably to try to improve the traceability of the information. And I think this could be good, maybe I'm a bit naive, to have a kind of certification of some people putting information. Uh, if I take the example of of France, when Le Monde put an information on X, Twitter, it's not the same quality than anybody is putting that. But you have also very valuable individuals. There are some scientists, for example, that try to inform people about the climate change, for example. Some of them are very good, some of them are not good. So probably kind of certification can help. Also, something which probably could improve the situation is to improve the responsibility of the platform first. We all know that platforms say, "Oh no, we are not responsible for what is on our. We are just the pipe, and this is not us that are responsible." And I don't think this is a good thing. But also the responsibility of the individuals, people putting information about racism should be prosecuted and that could be also a possibility. I'm very conscious that the law is very different in Europe in Europe than in the US. In the US, I don't remember the number, the number of the amendments, but you have a complete freedom of speech in Europe in general, but in France in particular. For example, racism can be prosecuted. It is not allowed. Making the apology of the Nazis, for example, is not authorized in France.
Sorry.
This is a question that we have from the chat. And so the question is, do you see influences from Russia impacting your media?
Yes, we see that.
In what way?
Alors, alors, I see on what I can read. The first area of influence, there is a link with the previous questions, is on the social media. Definitively, we see that on the social media. There is a big influence, a big risk of influence on social medias. The second risk is that sometimes media give a lot of importance to an information that has been created. Now, very often on good faith, to be clear, that have been created by Russians. There is on examples at the start of the Gaza operations in Palestine. There was we saw on some city. Paris was the main ones, but not only Paris. Some David star on some Muslim building. They were blue, all the same with all the same designs. On newspaper, a lot of the media talked a lot about it and say, "Oh, that was bad people who wanted to create hate between Muslim and Jewish." But actually, it has been done by people paid by the Russians. They have been arrested. Now we know that they were paid by Russia. But so they've been almost self-created by media on good faith. On good faith, it's not always easy to find that the information is a fake information.
Hello. Hang on, you're muted. There you go. Two questions. The second one is related to Richard's question, but first, background. What is it like in France in journalism? As you may know, journalism is in decline in U.S. You may have heard that we call it the fifth estate here. What is it like in France, and is there a country where journalism is thriving?
In France, it's declining also in France. The number of journalists is decreasing relatively slowly, but now this is a trend for on a long period. Is clearly decreasing. It's also decreasing because we see that the pay rise, for example, of journalists is very low. Young people that start to be journalists have a lot of problem to find a job, to be paid correctly. So lots of them are stopping. They stop. They cannot live on the job, so they stop. So we see a decline. It's probably not as important as in the US. but we definitely see a decline. The hope for me, the hope comes from the independent press I was mentioning. This is very small medias, and to be clear, this is not the influence of this media is not very important, but they are very innovative. They are made by people that are very passionate on creating new media, new way of informing people, trying to mix the writing with the video and the photo on podcast, etc. So probably is there another country? I think I will talk of Europe. Of Europe, I think the situation is similar in most of the countries. There are countries where there are big problems. In Hungary, for example, the media are owned by by the by by extreme right peoples. On the independent media, almost do not exist anymore. That's clear. That the worst situation in Poland is not great, also. Uh, but for if I take if I take I don't know UK, Belgium, Italy, etc., situation is probably very similar to France.
The next is I'm trying to get to a recommendation that you might have for us or any country, or we can try and help to advance it because this is a global issue. It's in decline. Uh, Richard mentioned regulation. You may know that Fox claimed that in their lawsuit that any fool knows that they're not news, that they're infotainment, but the public does not know that. They're buying it as news. So I don't think we can regulate to have Fox put in their banner, we're infotainment, we're not really giving you news. Do you see a path for trying to discern, to educate the public, to have them, as the Spencer's calls celeb? How do you get the public to be wiser consumers of media?
That's an important question. I mentioned C News in France, and C News is a kind of equivalent of Fox News in the US. It's very close. It's very close. And I would not be surprised that people managing C News are taking example of Fox News for lots of things. How to educate people? This is a big discussions. A discussion within the specialist, not in the public domain, unfortunately. But we are putting on Un Bout des Médias is pushing, but not only us. Lots of people, other associations, other journalists are pushing to to put more media education within the school. That already exists. There is normally, I say normally, you will understand why I say that. That should be part of the education the, of the people in school. To have that. Unfortunately, there is not a lot of money given to the schools. On most of the times, not always. There are very good teachers that are the teacher are not educated to give this kind of educations to the kids. So lots of people are pushing to that. There is that may change in the near future in France because some political persons are very interested by that and think this is an important way of educating the people. When I talk about school, of course, this is for young people. For the rest, you don't have the choice. You have to do what we try very without thinking we will be the savior to to do conference as we do in Un Bout des Médias, to go speak in media, in school, in different places. In Un Bout des Médias, for example, I am putting an activity with a game. So you can. The game has been designed for kids, but you can use it for adults also. So we are putting that in place. So for example, I have been. It was a festival, so I have been a whole afternoon playing with people. And the game the game is to help people understand how journalists work, how a good information is made. But there is no miracles. This is small actions, and if you have the solution, I would be delighted to know it. But I'm not sure that for the moment I have a good answer to your very good questions.
My question is somewhat related to David's. In the United States, print media is required, to the best of their knowledge, to only print the truth. And they can be sued if they don't. Broadcast media is not required to speak the truth. Is this a situation? What's the situation in France?
How can I answer these questions? Difficult to answer this question. This is no. To be honest, I never thought about that before your questions. There is no obligation for media, newspaper, broadcasting, televisions, to say the truth. I never thought about that before your questions. But of course, the quality of the media is based on that. Now, with a limit, and the limit is clearly linked with the questions that have been asked just before. If I take the example of CNews, I'm not very familiar with CNews, with Fox News, but I bet this is the same. Do they always say the truth? No, clearly not. When they say it, it is said in a manner that people don't understand what is the truth on the fake information. So there is no obligations. Now but we have committees in France. So, for example, if a citizen for the televisions, and take the example of television on purpose, there is a committee, it's television and radio actually, called ARCOM, where citizens can say, okay, I have seen this informations during the news on the channel X on the televisions, and this is not the truth. They can mention that on the ARCOM have the obligation to make an inquiry, and can find because that happened, can find the channel. And that has happened several times with CNews, to be honest.
I'm curious about how French media has presented the political climate in the United States and how if there's much variation in how it's presented or if they're all saying pretty much the same thing.
Alors, bon, of course, the political situation in the US is very important for Europe. The link are so strong between the US and Europe that we follow that very carefully, and we have lots of information. The way it is done depends completely on the media. If I take the example, if I start by Le Monde, for example, which is a very high quality. This is probably the best quality that you can of information that you. This is the reference in France for the information. And I am a reader of Le Monde. This is my main way of getting information. I think we have good information explaining. If I take the example of the current campaign you have at the moment, explaining with lots of fact what is ongoing oh, for the Republican at the moment. We have lots of information, and I read this morning, for example, the results of the South Carolina. What do you call that in the U.S. Elections for the Republican candidate?
Primary.
Primary. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Primary. So you have this kind of information, and I think that in Le Figaro you have. They are on the right, so they speak more on the right, but you have very good quality of information. In Libération, with the fact they are on the left, you have also very good. After that, having said that, I will mention again CNews because I talked about CNews during my presentations. Not sure. When I say I'm not sure, I am completely sure that this is not the same in CNews when they inform the people in France about what is going on in the US on the political situation at the moment. So this is completely dependent on the media. You have very good quality in media on poor quality on very partial media.
So, give us what's your favorite example of the biggest scandal in recent French history exposed by investigative journalism?
Oh, that's I should have asked me that you might not a question before. But yes, I have that has been regulated by. I have an example, and unfortunately, that have a consequence on one journalist. We have been an independent media called Disclose, and with the fact that France sold some armament to Egypt, and these armaments were not supposed to be involved to kill civilians. On Discord demonstrate very clearly that they have been used by that. Unfortunately, the journalists who have wrote this information have been is under big troubles at the moment, and we are all fighting to help her for that.
Okay, well, I thank you very much, Romary. I'd love to hear more about that, but I think our time has expired. Um, just a reminder, um, each week's program so is broadcast on KKFI roughly a week and a half later. Today's presentation is scheduled for March 5, 7 to 8 p.m., a week from this coming Tuesday on 90.1 FM, or go to kkfi.org. You can do that in France and click listen at that time. So if you want to share this with others, invite them to search for the forum at All Souls Church YouTube channel on allsoulskc.org, or after 8 p.m. Central Time on March 5th, go to kkfi.org, then News and Public Affairs, then All Souls Forum, and then you find this episode. There should be a podcast. Next week, Dr. Maria Stefan will inform us about the critical struggle for multiracial democracy in the U.S. and globally. Maria Stefan and Erica Chenoweth are by far the leading researchers I know on the relative effectiveness of violence and nonviolence. Others have studied war, or nonviolence, but the literature comparing their relative effectiveness seems to have been dominated by the work of Chenoweth and Stefan. Chenoweth is now on the faculty at Harvard, almost certainly in recognition of her of the value of her contributions with Dr. Maria Stefan. And now, people in the audience here, but I think are invited to stay for services, which begins in the Bragg Auditorium at 10:45, or via All Souls UU Church YouTube channel at allsoulskc.org. Thank you again, Romary. Appreciate it very much.
Welcome. My pleasure.
Okay. Au revoir.
Au revoir.